In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can utilize the write to color buffer nodes. So this is a node that is useful for being able to write out color information for the pass materials that normally are not supported by Maya 2009's pass rendering system. So an example for this would be something like the fast subsurface shader. Now, if you've had a chance to go through the lesson on dealing with the fast subsurface shader pass material, you'll see that we do have the ability to output certain passes from that type of material. Things like the beauty pass, the diffuse pass, the direct irradiance, and specular. However, with those types of materials, and by default, we don't have the ability to output things like backscattering, forward scattering, and so on and so forth. So that is a perfect opportunity to use the custom color buffers as a way of writing out the information that is normally not supported. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So I'll first start by jumping over into the Hypershade. And let's scroll down. We'll take a look at our fast subsurface material. Now for the moment, I'm using just the standard fast shader. So what we first need to do in order to utilize these custom color buffers is to upgrade the shader. So let's scroll down, and we can upgrade this to either the Fast Shader X or the Fast Shader X passes. Either one will work fine for what we're about to do. So let's just start with the Pass X material. There we go. So now, what we first need to do in order to be able to write out this custom color information is we first need to go to our render pass system that has been introduced now in Maya 2009 and make our custom color passes that will actually be able to hold the information that we're going to write out to. So let's go to our render pass list and we'll create custom color. So we'll create this, and we'll actually create a few. Let's create 4 of these, and we'll see why here in just a moment. So let's take our first custom color, and let's rename this. So we can call this something like diffuse. So that will hold the diffuse channel. We can call this something like backscatter. So that it will hold our backscattering information. We can call this something like front scatter. And for this last one, we can call this something like specular. Alright, so these will all hold a special portion of the subsurface shader that we're about to plug in. So once we have these set up, we can now associate these to the pass, so that way they will actually be rendered out whenever we batch render. So now that we have those in place, now we can start to add our custom color buffers. So these have been introduced in Maya 2009, and these can be found inside miscellaneous. So we can now use the write to color buffer. We can drop this in, and the first thing we can do is determine exactly which color pass this is going to write out to. So the passes that we created just a moment ago now show up in this drop down menu. So we can write this information out to the diffuse pass, and if we have our pass material or the X material, we can simply take this, middle click, and drag it into the color input of this write to color node. Now you'll notice that the connection editor pops up. So over here on this left hand side, we can determine what we want to plug in, or which information we want to be able to write into this buffer. So we want to use one of the results, either diffuse result, specular result, front result, back result, and so on. In our case, we'll start with diffuse result, since we have set this to the diffuse pass, or really any pass that we choose. So we'll take diffuse result, plug it into color, and there we go. So now let's make another one. So this one will be the backscatter. Again, middle click, drop this into the color. And for this one, we'll take the back result, connect it into color, and now we'll be able to write out the backscattering result. We'll do the same thing for this next one. Let's take this one, and this one will be the front result. So front result into color, and there we go. And let's make sure that we have this set to write out to the front scatter buffer. And finally, let's do our specular. So this one we can just kind of move this up and out of the way. Scroll down and set this to specular result. Write that out to the color. And again, make sure that we have this set to be the specular color pass that we've just set up. Alright, so it does take a few steps to be able to write this information out correctly, but now that we have this set up, all we have to do is just simply go into the Common tab and just choose what format we want to write this out into. We can choose any format that we want. And in our case, we can just give this a file name prefix. And just to keep these passes organized, we can right-click in here and insert a pass name. There we go. So that way we'll get a file that is subsurface scattering diffuse, subsurface scattering backscatter, forward scatter, so on. So now, all we have to do, once we have this set up, is go to Render and batch render this out. Alright, and once the render is complete, we can now take a look at our output directory and find the images that have been written out for us. So here's that output directory, and if we take a look, we should have the backscatter, and there we go. Now we have the backscatter information that's been written out into its own pass. We also have the diffuse, which in our case also contains a little bit of specular and reflective information, and that's just due to the way that we had our shader set up. So in our case, we did have, for the diffuse pass, or for the diffuse shader, we did have this MIAX material. So as a result, it does show up here in the diffuse pass. We also have the front scatter information, and there's the beauty pass. And we also have the specular pass. Alright, so that's a look at how we can take these custom color buffers and use that as a way of writing out this color information and getting a little bit deeper control over our passes as opposed to the pre-built controls that we can sometimes be limited to with Maya's built-in pass rendering system.